Hello and welcome to another episode of Rapidly Aging Tech, where we're going to be upgrading the dickens out of the IBM 5170. To start out, we're going to go with a second floppy drive. In this case, another 1.2 megabyte 5 1/4 drive. And let me pull over the one I got. Here we go. Having an awkward angle here. It looks visually in pretty decent shape, but see, a little tad dirty. I blew it out a bit. You'll notice that it must have had some damage to its castings in shipping, but that shouldn't actually affect the rest of it. It's just some of the supports for the controller board. When you prep the new drive for install, as you will see in the official instructions, which IBM provides in the operations book, you'll notice it wants you to take for the second drive, which is drive B, which is in the middle of the cable, to remove any resistor or change the switch blocks if one is present. On mine there was present one. You can see the socket right there. And I did in fact remove it. And I did following IBM's instructions. Insert a small flat braid screwdriver between the resistor and the socket and lift up. I would recommend, if you have a chip puller, to do that, because, well, I am perfectly capable of doing something like this, of course, an expert that I am. But if you're a buffoon, you might have something else happen. So to begin this whole process, we're going to be essentially undoing all these screws on the front, removing this bottom plate, and removing this support strut here because it overlaps a little bit into the slot where the drive goes. So I'm going to undo all those and we'll pop back in. Once you remove these two screws, the whole blanking plate comes out. Clearly this is using a different standard than modern cases that have the plastic plate just clip in. And I'll also notice that this plastic here, it feels almost like there's not padding, but it has that sort of almost padded feel. Maybe for noise reduction, I'm not sure. It seems to have some sort of coating on it. When the instructions call for removing these two screws, because we need to take off the blanking plate, and then with this plate down here is going to go back on for being underneath the floppy drive. This gives us an excellent opportunity to take a peek at the front of the drive here. And it is exceedingly large, delightfully so. You might notice that if this lower plate is removed, there is in fact enough room for another hard drive of the same size. I would suspect that a modern hard drive with adapters to make it fit in the larger gap would in fact fit if you had a modern controller. Now, I wanted to kick off filming here again to explain actually how these drives are kept in. You might expect that they're just screwed in, somewhat like how a modern computer is. Well, they actually use these, a screw and a little clip. Essentially, they just go in, slide in, you screw them in, and then they just hold the drive in from the front, from sliding out forward. Kind of an interesting system. Over on this side, there's this big bracket. And over on this side, it actually has a spare clip, which I suspect is going to be moved over to the position here to hold in the drive there. And then this bracket has a kind of a built-in clip on it on this side. Kind of an interesting way of building. The instructions call for sliding the top drive out a bit, probably to give more room for our hands back here to work with all the cabling. You'll notice that there's this black support here, which the replacement drive, or the extra drive, also has. They're black plastic rails. And so they essentially slide into a groove system. So keep that in mind if you ever just try to find just any old 5 1/4 inch drive to fit in here. You'll need to get either jury rig or find these brackets. You'll also note that over here, all the drives are connected with these additional black cables. You can see this little thing here. This is for grounding. I'm not sure how necessary it is, but the replacement drive has a spot for the clip to go. Right there. It's a little metal bit that sticks up so that everything's nice and grounded. Not sure if it's just an additional safety feature or if it is something that's somewhat necessary with these older power supplies that are constant on or constant off. Alright, this is the phase where we push in the second drive, and it's fairly smooth. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back here and try to get the cables all connected. Alright folks, don't forget to ground yourself when you're digging around in the internals. I seem to have gotten the cable here, the B connector, which is actually labeled, not sure if you can see that, B. So IBM definitely has a bit of thought towards people upgrading these things, which is nice. Okay, so we got the card edge connector almost on. Maybe not. I wonder how much editing I'm going to have to do to make this look like it was smooth. There we go. That's connected. Now the Molex power, which surprisingly is placed so that it's easier. Let's see, do I have the... Is it edged in right, or does it need to be flipped? I think it needs to be flipped. So that's the Molex connector. Come on, there. Oh, that feels pretty decent. Yep. Okay. That's about as best I can do, especially since the controller card is a bit loose. But it looks like it's in about the same amount as the other one. The last step is to grab the grounding wire, and right here is just metal. It connects to the case, and try to get that slipped in onto there. You may find that loosening the grounding connector on this side and repositioning it a little bit will give you some more leeway. Once you do that, you should be able to get it connected. Mine, I think I need to push on a little more now that I have more slack, but the grounding wire should be connected. You just might need to wiggle things around a bit. Alright, now that we have that in, we're going to reinstall the clips and the bracket, and they should be ready to go. By the way, if you ever find that you have some visual problems inside these dark cases, getting a headlamp or something like this, a head mirror, sort of like a doctor's or surgeon's mirror, sometimes helps a little bit, spread out some more light. So that's something I like to use. Plus, if you're ever doing work on someone else's computer or in a shop or something, it makes you look like either A, you really know what you're doing, or B, you're forever alone. Alright, so we're starting to screw these in. I would recommend starting with your hands just to get them in position. Then you might need to use the use your hands to kind of guide the clips in into the groove properly. Alright, once the top one is done, you'll end up doing a bracket on this side with a spare bracket, and then this big guy over here is going to be the support bracket on this side. After 30 years or so, there actually is some signs of corrosion around the exposed metal around some of these screw holes. It's not much. It's really quite minor, but that is what happens when something sits in a warehouse for so long. However, the rest of this machine is pretty much immaculate. It's just a few little spots, and they're so minor they're not even a problem. And there we go. Second drive installed. Isn't that nice? Brackets back in. So now we're going to work on expansion cards. So you may wonder, what delights do I have for you in this machine here today? Well, a machine that's going to be doing having some games on it could really use something like a sound card. PC speaker is fine, and for some games it seems to work just, it seemed they were built for it. Other games are going to want something a little better. This is a Sound Blaster Pro 2. It's the CT 1600. Since it's not a plug-and-play version, it's all jumpers, which is, you know, quite fine in my book, especially considering the type of machine this is. It's set to the usual I/O settings of 220 and the IRQ of 7, so that should work fine. It seems to have a CD controller. We won't need that, and I'm not even sure how compatible that is with other CD drives. I believe they were somewhat vendor specific. The outputs are, of course, we have our joystick / MIDI. We have a speaker out, a volume wheel. I'm not sure if this is an amplified card, so that standard speakers might be overrun, so I'll keep this real low when I start. And then a mic in and line in. Next we have something that's pretty special. It's an IBM cluster adapter, new in box. The box is pretty dang beat up because the outer boxes are very thin, but it came with a new card. It comes in this strange foam packaging, which is not the first time I've seen it on older equipment. But this card was designed to connect a cluster of IBM PCs together to share files and data and whatnot. And it uses the same type of connector as my Dual Pentium Pro machine's Ethernet card. This has a little terminator resistor in it. See, there you go. There's a little terminator. The seller wrote a note on my receipt from eBay saying that they might have some of the software for this. Hopefully I can make it work with something, maybe with my Windows 2000 Dual Pentium Pro machine. Otherwise I may switch out its empty spot in this machine with something else, which I will show you. But you'll notice that it has at least one AMD branded chip on it. That's pretty dang neat. In the box with the cluster card, it also came with the instruction booklet on how to install it. In this manual, you notice there are a lot of components where it just says, open up the box, take out the instructions, clip them in here, and follow them. It also came with a booklet on testing your system, testing your XT system. I put that in the book here in testing because it was fairly light. At least the built-in AT one was fairly light. This information is mostly not applicable to the AT, but why not hold on to the data? And then it also came with the XT diagnostics disk, which, by the way, you put it on the AT and basically throws up errors for every test. But so I have that too. So not a bad deal. Now, those savvy watchers who have watched my most recent episode on the AT recognize this as the memory board I have from DFI. I've gone from, I originally put 512 kilobytes of RAM on it in that previous video. I have now put in an extra 512, so now it's 1 megabyte. I'm waiting on more RAM because you can only use either one bank, bank 1 and 2, or bank 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can't just do 3 banks. Here are the RAM chips in their tube. So once I get more, it will have a maximum of 2 megabytes on that board. But that seems a bit light. Plus the manual seems to indicate that there are only 2 options, either expanded memory or topping off conventional and using extended, which would sort of explain why the himem.sys driver seems to be having problems when I try to load it on this machine. This board, however, in its box, shouldn't have that problem. It's a Boca RAM, Boca Research memory board. This one I think was designed primarily for the XT, but it seems to be AT compatible. Inside you will find the software for the expanded memory driver. I think an earlier version, 3.2, DOS 6.22 should have a more up-to-date version. You have it on. This is, I believe, a 720 kilobyte 3.5, and I think it's also a 720 5.25 floppy disk. Inside you will also find the original receipt from a company called 10X, Computer Express. They seem to have gone out of business sometime in the 90s. Even has the original shipping too. Some man in Wichita, Kansas. I won't put his name up. He could easily be still alive. and I don't know if he still lives at that address. Based upon this sales slip, this 2 megabyte board was $200 back in the day. He also ordered a $339.95 4 megabyte board. So this guy was, I'm guessing, a computer enthusiast at the time. It's also the old return number and 10x's customer service. And this is a nice little pleasant thing. All the employees, or a number of them, the little thanks for your business, they've all signed it. That's fun. Sounds like people had a fond memory of 10x from what I've been able to find on the internet. Leave a note in the comments if you ordered something from them and have a story about them. But it's sad to see a company go out of business when, as far as I know, they didn't do anything poorly. And this is the board itself, decked out with, looks like 80 nanosecond Gold Star RAM. This is 2 megabytes in total. It is an 8-bit ISA. If I remember right, fewer nanoseconds means quicker because there's lower delay. So this board, while it's an 8-bit ISA card, has quicker RAM than my 16-bit ISA card. So I'm not sure what the performance difference will really be between the two. They'll both be running at the same time. I doubt that 8-bit ISA is too much of a bottleneck, but we'll find out. Now, some of you who have seen my previous videos are probably wondering why the inside of this computer has been reorganized. If you recall, the video card was back over here. Some of the cards were switched around. I did that because of this. This card is going in here. This is a fan card combo. It's an I/O controller. It has an IDE controller, floppy drive controller, serial ports, both the 9-pin and 25-pin version, a game port, and a printer port, all in one. And these fans to help circulate air. On the back, there's an interesting little story about computers in the Persian Gulf with the military constantly crashing some Zenith systems, and them getting fan cards and the system staying operational. So I thought, hey, why not? This thing could use a little more air circulation. So I reorganized the interior to facilitate where I wanted to place it. I want to place it right here. And the reason is, I wanted to put it right by the video card, so I moved the video card over here. And I want to put it right by the processor. The processor, I made a mistake in my first video putting it somewhere over here by the coprocessor. It's actually this little gray chip down here in the center underneath the controller board. You can see it right there with looks like a bit of a sticker on it. Anywho, with that fan card, there should be air going over the video card, which I'm sure gets a bit warm, the controller card, which is important, and there will be maybe some air fluctuation around the CPU itself. I think that's a fairly decent setup. This is the card itself. It's got one fan blowing, I guess it'll be towards this side, one fan blowing this side, so it tries to circulate air. And it has all its headers for different things. This is for the game port, IDE, floppy. This is serial port 1. This is serial port 2. Since I already have a serial port on my IBM card, I move this over to 2 so there's no conflicts. You can set 1 to be either be 1 and 3, and 2 can be either be 2 and 4. And we have the back here, parallel serial. If this card has problems and I can't actually get the parallel serial port to work, then I will replace it with a second IBM, genuine IBM serial and parallel card, which is set up already, it's jumpered to be number 2. Keep in mind, while I haven't shown it beforehand, I've gone through, and all these cards that have jumpers or dip switches, I've tried to find out, if there's no manual, how to configure them to make them work ideally. This one, for the most part, has all of its extra features disabled, except for serial and parallel. If that network card, sorry, not the network card, if the cluster card turns out to be something I just can't really use, it's neat to have but doesn't function, I can take the additional headers and put in a backplate for serial, DB25, and another game port potentially. So I can do that. This card, of course, also came with a floppy cable and an IDE drive cable, but it also came with this. It appears to be a way to power speakers. It has different connectors depending on the type of power input for speakers. And there's a little header connector, a little 2-pin connector on the board. Very strange. If you've experienced this sort of thing or remember this being common, please comment in the comments below. So those are the cards I'm going to be inserting today. Now, for those of you who are IBM purists and wish this was a solid IBM machine, you'll have to forgive me. Let's see if this will actually even go in. Don't forget to be grounded, folks. It's probably not much of an issue, but you know, better safe than sorry. Now, you never want to force anything, so be gentle. You might need to take out other cards for more leverage. All right, yeah, it was just a matter of loosening up these screws to give a little more leverage, a little more wiggle room here. Some of these slots don't, these cards are old and they've been jostling around in boxes, so sometimes their brackets are a tad warped one way or another. So it's just something you have to deal with when you're working with older parts. So now we have the other RAM card, which I will put right by this RAM card. These slots here are actually pretty handy for guiding things in. They do cause one problem though. If you get one side in a little more than the other, like say you get this side down more than the other, they do cause a little more resistance when you're trying to correct things. But for the most part, they're pretty handy. There we go. Next, we have the network card, which I've removed the resistor to give make it a little easier to get that little bit out there. 8-bit are certainly easier to get in. I'm just going to put that out there by a significant margin. Now the sound card. Now for those of you who are concerned about power consumption, which is reasonable, the AT came with a 192 watt power supply, and I've measured mine using my APC battery backup. When it was running, I didn't see it go over really 90 watts, and I imagine this is a pretty inefficient power supply by today's standards. So it's probably effectively drawing a lot less for the entire system. And look at that. I haven't screwed them all in yet, but there's something, I'm not sure about you, but there's something gratifying in seeing a computer with all its slots maxed out. And I don't mean like on a modern system where you have a triple slot graphics card that just hangs over everything. I mean individual cards in every slot. And there's even, I didn't intend this, on this side there's a cascading length until you get to the full length cards, and then it kind of has an in and drop down there. So, impressive. We've fully maxed this thing out. And I don't believe the CPU is upgradable, but you know, I think that'd be going a bit too far for a system like this. And here is the I/O. Out the back we have the IBM parallel serial, the fan card one, our VGA, the RAM cards are there, so there's nothing, our cluster card, and our sound card. And I think that the placement of the sound card at the end is good, not just for isolation from the other components, but if you're reaching around to manipulate the volume knob, it makes sense to have it around on the edge of the computer here. So, a smart decision that I didn't even think about until I put it in. Because I'm a super genius, apparently. Well, happy spring, everybody. Alright, so before we fire it up, we're going to insert the AT diagnostics disk, because we're going to have to run setup on the components, including telling it how many floppy drives there are, and how much RAM we have installed. Some of the other devices may pop up too, but they might not, so we'll just find out. Alright, let's let her rip. It's definitely a tad louder with that fan card. doing the memory count. I counted up to what's on the original card at the very least. Oh, I heard both floppy drives seek. Okay. Yep, we're going to run setup. Yep, that's all right. Now, you see it references a foldout. If you bought this from the factory or from an actual dealer, they would have filled out a card for you telling you all your options, all the things that you'd need to intelligently fill this out. However, since I've torn this thing apart and worked on it, I know what the answers are. So it's asking, is drive B a 360 kilobyte drive? No. Enter selection. 2. Enter. This is correct. I'm sorry if this is fuzzy for you. See if I zoom in a bit, it'll give me maybe a little more clarity. There we go. Yes, only one hard drive. This is the primary display and only display. The base memory is 640 because of the expansion card. No. Expansion memory size has gotten bigger because we added 2 megabytes. So 3 megabytes of expansion in total, 2 from one card, 2 from the other, minus the 128 kilobytes should equal 2944. That's 372 minus 128. Hopefully my math is right. Invalid memory size. I do 2048. We'll see what errors pop through. So the RAM count. All right, it's not detecting that second card for whatever reason. Maybe it won't be able to count it, but a program might be able to utilize it. A driver might be able to load it in, but the BIOS can't actually count it, which that's fine. So I will fix that. And we will then clean the second floppy drive, because I'm sure the heads are a bit dirty. And then we'll see if it will actually read something. Alright, so the autoexec.bat and config.sys are fairly simple right now. Himem seems to load pretty dang well. I'm trying to get IBM386 to work. Hasn't happened so far, but once again, I think that the memory board I was using is currently set to only do extended, not expanded RAM. But this other one seems to be designed for expanded. So maybe it'll be able to work, but that's something I'll focus on later. Let's see if we can get this other floppy drive to work. I'm sure that you can hear that the machine is louder than in previous videos. That's because of the 2 fans. They are in fact spinning, and there is a little red indicator light on the board. I can feel with my hand that there is a decent amount of airflow circulating around here, so hey, nothing bad there. I'm sure with the heavy-duty case on top of it, the volume will drop quite a bit. So now, what we want to do is clean the heads here. Now if this is a full height drive, you could probably get access to the heads pretty easily when you had it out. But since this is a half height, we're going to have to, I'm sure you can still do it if you tried, but we're going to use one of these. I've used this for my drives. Even new drives that I've gotten would sometimes have problems reading things. You'd run this through it and it's just fine. So you just put a little bit of cleaning liquid, which is I think a little more than rubbing alcohol, and on the pad, then run it through and have the operating system try to see what's on the disk. So I put some liquid on there. Gotta put it in. And it seems to be doing some sort of seeking. And I'll tell the operating system to take a look. So the operating system is trying to see it, and it's not ready. So that should, I'll tell it to abort. So after running through a cleaning, we're going to put a data disk in and see if it can see it. Since I don't know if I can trust this drive because it was pretty dang beat up, I'm going to put in one of my blank 5 1/4 drives that had some bad sectors on it, and we'll see if we can format the thing. Then maybe we'll copy something to it. General failure reading drive B. That's not good. This doesn't sound good either. It might just be a bad drive. Well, that sucks. All right, it's been a few hours later. I've been fiddling with things. Let's fire her back up. I've made a lot of changes. Not hardware-wise, but in the software. You see, okay, trying to get the camera to focus. Since the cards are from 2 different brands, I expect that their governing software has a bit of a conflict. That and the extended memory board can't run as expanded, and the expanded memory board can't run as extended. So I've had to make a bit of a compromise, at least with my current setup. As you'll see, I've created a boot menu using Phil's Computer Labs as a template. So top one is extended memory only. I can put it in a mouse driver later if I want. Bottom one is expanded memory only. We're going to do extended because it seems to be the most compatible, at least with the programs I have on here. So that's the himem driver. If we go into edit the config.sys, you'll see what I've done. So we have just kind of the general stuff here. The labels here, if we pick extended, we load himem, and we load DOS into high memory and upper memory blocks. If we do expanded memory, then we just launch the proprietary, or not necessarily proprietary, but the drivers that came with the Boca Research disk for that particular card. I'll restart the computer and show you what happens when it loads. All right, we're back at the boot menu, and now we're going to pick choice number 2. So as you can see, I did all this testing of expanded RAM, and you find something kind of goofy here. It says 4 megs of RAM available. Now either I purchased what I thought was a 2 meg board and they actually gave me a 4 meg board, or, and this is what I think is more likely, look, EMS compatible boards found 2. It's examining both expansion boards, looking at their max capacities and saying, oh, there's 4 megs here. The problem is the DFI board isn't full. It only has 1 meg on it, which might be leading to some of the compatibility issues I'm running with. So I'm going to load Wolfenstein 3D and show you one of the problems I've had when I've loaded just expanded memory, or when I've loaded both of them together, trying to do himem.sys and this. himem.386 does not seem to work. The Microsoft site talking about, it's an archived document. It says it only works with 386 CPUs and up, though I've seen other references of working on other ones, on 286s and lower. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to load on this machine. It just kind of locks blinking cursor trying to get it to load. So we'll open Wolfenstein 3D. All right, so this is a neat screen to have because it actually shows what's going on. When I loaded both drivers together and the Boca RAM disk software, it would say that I had a sound source connected too. Very strange. And as you can hear, the Sound Blaster is working. That's a German tune, but I can't remember the name of it. All right, controls, we go into sound. Everything's fine. AdLib Sound Blaster. Don't need to do PC speaker anymore. And so now we'll start a game. And this is what happens when expanded memory or extended and expanded memory are loaded onto the machine. Everything seems fine. Music is playing, loading up the game. Well, in this case, it failed to load anything. Other times, it's shown just garbled pixels, colors. Sometimes you could even move a little bit, but once you left the room, it locked up. And the machine is locked up, so we're gonna have to hard power cycle it. All right, now we're popping back into Wolfenstein 3D, but this time we're doing extended memory. Now, please excuse me if I ever get the two memory forms reversed because their names are very similar. Not one of the better ideas. Anyway, you'll see the bar has changed over to XMS. Let's see if we can actually see what the game looks like. So forewarning, because it is a 286, and it's a lower speed 286 compared to what the game says it wants to run. I've made the screen smaller. So here we are. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. I'm pretty bad here, so. We're going to try to find somebody to shoot. Oh, he's on the other side of me. Actually, the game's running pretty smooth. One of the reasons behind that is that this graphics card has a no wait state option, which I selected, and it moves much quicker. Well, let's try another game. A tank game. One that I played a very similar version on old beige Macintoshes in my typing class. Tank Wars, probably other names. The general idea is you are a non-moving thing and you try to use power and elevation of the gun to shoot a shell and hit other folks. And the sound options are very minimal here. And I think this one always uses the PC speaker. I can't remember. the config file doesn't seem to work. I can't seem to do anything in it. So if there are more advanced options, it doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so that's the enemy there. I'm the red guy up here. And let's just see if we can lob a shot here. Oh, that was too much. Oh, and he got me. And there's different, the tanks just blow up in different ways. In this case, it sort of seems to burn through everything. In other cases, the ammo rack gets blasted, and they shoot out more shells. Getting closer. So that's one way of dying too. Oh, big explosion. Other times they'll also create a plume of dirt, which will then pile up and create more obstacles. A neat little game. Another game that I currently have on the system is the Hoosier City trilogy. And we'll just start up, I think the first one here. It's strange in that it has music at the start menu, but it just uses PC speaker in the game. There's no configuration file. It just seems to do that, which is strange. But it's a fairly small file. Yep, so here we are. When we actually start the game, it's all PC speaker. It's also one of those games that I believe I'm swinging my sword, but it looks like I'm throwing my sword. It's one of those games that it seems like you're just supposed to avoid combat more than anything. Because it takes a while to kill guys, and you don't normally do a whole lot of damage. But I'm sure people who are better at this sort of game than me have figured it out. The little blood drops are interesting. But yeah, so these are some games that are working on 286, and the Sound Blaster is working, at least when the games allow for it. Oh, see, that was some music through the speakers. So it just uses the PC speaker heavily, and then we'll use the speakers for little musical notes like that. Oh, and since we're back out here, the enemies respawn. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this look at upgrading the IBM PC AT 5170. What have we learned? We've learned that the floppy disk B is dead, or at least it's broken at the moment. Maybe it's fixable, but I'm not sure how. I don't remember how much I captured on camera, but after running the cleaning disk through, just as a default, it couldn't. Not only does it doesn't read any other disks, but it throws up general floppy disk errors. General floppy drive errors, which I think means something's bad. When it got jostled enough to break the castings, little the casted support struts on the drive, I suspect some component was damaged as well, which is a shame. So anyone who catches, finds one of these drives somewhere inexpensively, relatively speaking, go ahead and tell me about them, or if you can find a 3.5 inch 144 megabyte floppy drive designed for this machine, so the right color in the adapter, please tell me. That would be great, because I would like to have 3.5-inch floppy drive support. I may, since I do have an IDE controller, I may try putting a CD drive in, though I suspect it's hard drive only, so it probably won't work. Anywho, next time we're going to be trying to hook this thing up via parallel port to another computer using laplink-like software to see if I can move larger files between the two machines, because some of my programs I can manually break up into 5.25-inch floppy disks. Other ones are just one big executable, and so I need a specialized program to do that. Or put them on a CD, but this thing can't read CDs. So we're going to try that. We're going to install a mouse and see what kind of games we get to play. And hopefully by then I will have more RAM chips, so that I will have 2 megs of extended memory along with the 2 megs of expanded memory. Most of my games, since they are later, will probably be quite happy with extended. At least that's my guess. Anywho, leave a like, comment below. I asked a few questions here. If you have any input or any thoughts on anything I put in here, or maybe some of the issues I was seeing, like Wolf 3D, which, remember, that happens even when both extended and expanded memory are running. Leave a comment. If you have put himem.sys on a 286 and had it work fine, tell me. Anywho, I'll leave you with that. Stay tuned for the next installment where we put more software on, use that lap-link cable, or try. Who knows if it'll work. And hey, keep an eye out for parts for me. I'll see you around. And I hope that your Easter was good and you spent time with families and were able to make the best of it. Not just Easter bunnies and chocolate. Though I'm quite happy if you're able to gorge yourself on chocolate. That's usually part of the plan. Anyway, see you later.